Here's a detailed 1,000-word story based on your title. I've made it cinematic, emotional, and suspenseful while keeping it grounded in realism. Girl pilot landing in turbulence. Then the F-16 commander said, "Welcome back, ma'am." Lieutenant Sarah Harper gripped the control stick of her fighter jet as the storm clouds roared above her. Her F-16 was being tossed violently by turbulence, the kind that made even veteran pilots tense. Rain lashed against the canopy, and lightning flashed so close it seemed to illuminate every panel in the cockpit. This mission wasn't supposed to be dangerous. What was meant to be a routine training sortie over the mountains had turned into a sudden weather nightmare. The radar had shown a violent storm forming in minutes, but it had caught most pilots by surprise. Sarah was young, just 23, and one of the few women in her squadron. Yet, there was no time to worry about her age or gender. Survival depended on precision, calm, and instinct. "Steady, Sarah," she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. Her hands were steady on the controls, though her heart raced. Every decision mattered now. A single miscalculation could send her jet spiraling into the valley below. Her comms crackled. "Harper, this is Echo Lead. The weather is deteriorating fast. Recommend immediate landing at Base Delta." "Over." "Copy that, Echo Lead," she replied, trying to mask the strain in her voice. Base Delta was her closest option, but the approach was tricky. The airfield was surrounded by jagged peaks and narrow valleys, and the wind was unpredictable. Only the most precise pilots could land there safely in such conditions. As she descended through the storm, Sarah's training kicked in. She ignored the spinning clouds, the deafening thunder, and the blinding rain. She focused on her instruments, her instincts guiding her as much as her eyes. Every turbulence she encountered required minute adjustments, tilting the jet, balancing the throttle, and predicting how the gusts would push her aircraft. Minutes felt like hours. Her hands were blistered, her jaw tight, but she kept her composure. Then came the most critical part, the final approach. Sarah aligned the jet with the runway. Her eyes flicked between the horizon and her altimeter, calculating the descent with meticulous care. The jet lurched violently as a gust hit her from the left. She adjusted instantly, banking slightly, and her stomach dropped with the sudden maneuver. "Steady, steady," she whispered, though the words did little to calm the adrenaline pumping through her veins. Finally, the runway appeared in the gaps of the storm. The rain-slicked tarmac reflected the jet's shadow, a narrow target in a turbulent world. Sarah's mind raced through her landing checklist: landing gear down, flap set, speed controlled. Her jet shuddered as she lowered it toward the ground. Then, a sudden crosswind pushed the aircraft sideways. Sarah reacted instantly, countering with precise adjustments. The tires kissed the wet asphalt with a jolt, bouncing slightly before gripping. She felt a rush of relief, though her arms remained tense, her focus unbroken until the jet came to a complete stop. A voice came over the calm yet commanding, breaking through the storm's roar. "Lieutenant Harper, this is Commander James Hawk Donovan. Welcome back, ma'am." Sarah froze for a moment, disbelief mixing with exhaustion. Commander Donovan was legendary in the Air Force, a veteran F-16 pilot who had flown countless missions and trained many young pilots. His approval was rare, and she had only met him a few times in passing. To hear him personally welcome her back was more than a commendation. It was a recognition of her skill, her courage, and her perseverance. "Thank you, sir," she replied, her voice shaking with relief and pride. The jet taxied to the hangar, engine still humming with power. As Sarah climbed out, rainwater dripping from her helmet, she realized the full weight of what she had just accomplished. The squadron gathered around, murmuring congratulations, but her eyes sought Commander Donovan. He was standing near the hangar, hands behind his back, watching her. "Sarah," he said as she approached, "that was an exceptional landing. I've seen many pilots struggle in turbulence like that, but you handled it with precision and calm. That's what separates good pilots from great ones." Sarah felt a surge of pride, but she knew she had been lucky in many ways. The storm had been fierce, and one wrong move could have been catastrophic. But experience, training, and instinct had carried her through. "Thank you, sir. I just focused on what I was trained to do," she said humbly. Donovan nodded. "Humility is important. But remember this, courage under pressure is rare, and you've shown it today. The skies are unpredictable, but with skill and composure like yours, you'll be ready for anything." As the storm finally began to clear, Sarah looked at her jet, gleaming despite the rain and mud. She thought about her journey, the long hours of training, the skepticism she had faced as a young female pilot in a male-dominated field, the relentless drive to prove herself. Today had been a test, and she had passed. Her squadron mates came over, slapping her on the back, joking, and congratulating her. Yet, in her mind, the moment she would remember forever was Commander Donovan's voice over the comm, saying, "Welcome back, ma'am." Those words were more than recognition, they were a validation of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, and every moment of doubt she had overcome. Later that evening, as the sun broke through the remnants of the storm, Sarah sat in the briefing room, looking out at the airfield. She reflected on what she had learned, not just about flying in extreme conditions, but about resilience, focus, and trust in her abilities. The Air Force had trained her well, but the experience had taught her more than any manual ever could. It had shown her that fear was natural, but it could be harnessed, controlled, and transformed into action. From that day on, whenever Sarah took to the skies, she remembered the storm, the turbulence, and the runway that had seemed almost impossible to reach. And she remembered the words of a legendary pilot, spoken with respect and authority, which had forever cemented her confidence. "Welcome back, ma'am." In the cockpit, at 30,000 feet, surrounded by clouds and the roar of her engines, Lieutenant Sarah Harper knew one thing for certain: she was no longer just a girl pilot, she was a pilot who had faced the storm and returned stronger, braver, and ready for anything.